Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for what I guess is not technically Coffee with Kevin because I don't have any hot chocolate with me. So this can't be Coffee with Kevin, but I think it's one of our town halls. So we're maybe on a single topic Coffee with Kevin when we talk about our fall plans. So thank you for taking the time to be here, and hello to everybody. We're going to do this format like we have done some of the town halls and how we've done the recent coffees with Kevin. And Ginny Larimore is going to be our moderator to go through the questions that we had, and we had some submitted in advance. Thank you for that. And we'll go through those. Ginny, anything else we need to cover as we get started?
Hi, Kevin. No, that's great. Thank you. Anybody who is watching on YouTube can ask questions via comments, and we'll get those asked time allowing as well. And we did categorize the submitted questions. There were quite a few repeats, so we categorized them accordingly, and we'll start with those today.
Okay, thanks, Ginny. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we have a lot to talk about today. Because I know everyone has seen the email that we sent out and seen the news reports about what we're going to do this fall. And that is going to be our topic today. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we do, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about one other item first, an important item that we need to discuss, and that is this. I want to send out my personal congratulations, and I think congratulations of the entire Idaho State University team to our Bengal women's basketball team. Last Friday, they performed a 35-point victory over the University of Idaho Vandals to be the Big Sky Conference champions. And they are moving on to the big dance to represent Idaho State University. So, okay, first of all, this is our first Big Sky Conference team sport championship since 2015. That's reason to celebrate. Secondly, during a time of COVID restrictions, this team dedicated itself to doing the right thing. And as we saw other teams across the conference and nationally have to cancel games due to COVID, this team followed all the rules. And they never had to cancel a single game, because they did the right thing. They showed us about that level of dedication, and it made them strong. And they served as an example for all of us, for all of Idaho State, something we can all be proud of. And during a tough pandemic, this team gave us reason to cheer. And not just because they were amazing when they were on the court, but because of what this team represents for us academically. One of the members of this team is this year's Outstanding Student Award winner in the College of Science and Engineering. And she's now in graduate school in computer science and is the first woman to be accepted into the computer science master's program here. She's one of 3 members of this team that's in grad school, and they're all high-performing graduate students. And another member of this team is in her clinical rotations in the radiologic science program. And she heads to the gym every morning for weightlifting at 6 o'clock, then goes and puts in a full day at the hospital, and then comes to practice in her scrubs after working with COVID patients. And in some cases has been in live surgeries, and then that night had to go play a basketball game. And the MVP of the Big Sky Conference tournament has a 3.95 undergrad GPA, and English is her second language. And overall, this team's GPA for this last fall was 3.71. This women's basketball team deserves the recognition and support of this entire university. So, go to the bookstore and get your t-shirt to support this team. It's available in the bookstore and online. And this isn't just some shameless product plug. It's because this team has earned the pride and respect of this university, and we should wear that shirt. I wore mine all weekend. This team gave us all inspiration. This team in particular inspired me. And so thank you for letting me take a moment to talk about that, because I think that's important because of what this team did on the court and in the classroom. So congratulations to those Bengals. They're fantastic. Okay, so now jumping into why we are here today. First, I want to talk a little bit about why we did this and why we did this now. So first of all, it's about two things. Excuse me. It's about being ready for fall, and it's about the vaccine rollout. So we have to get the fall schedule ready and published within the next few weeks so that students can register for classes before they finish the semester. So in order to get students registered for fall before they leave, we have to get that schedule publishable by April. And April is just a couple of weeks away. So we have to decide where our classes are and what the class delivery mode is going to be now so that the registrar's office can room those classes. So we had to do that rooming and social distance decision now, even though it's 6 months from now when those classes will take place. That required us to think about what things might be like 6 months from now and make those decisions so we could tell our students what they needed to know to get registered. So we looked at the data, all the data surrounding the pandemic. We looked at the vaccine rollout, and the good news is the spread of the pandemic is lessening. The trend lines are moving in the right direction, both in our community and nationally. Now we know that that can change, and that this pandemic can change at any time, and we're going to continue to monitor that. But right now, it's moving in the right direction, and we hope that will continue. With the major factor that's coming into play is the vaccines. Now, nationally, Dr. Fauci and President Biden have stated that by the time we get into June, there will be enough vaccines so that every adult in the United States who wants one will be able to have one. In fact, after we made this decision, then further announcements that came out, and President Biden announced that they're going to make it so that by May 1st, everyone over age 16 will be eligible to get their vaccine. They've been looking at the current rate of the rollout of the vaccine, now that there's 3 different manufacturers, and the supply will be there. And they're confident that nationally there will be enough doses that by May 1st, anybody who wants one can start getting vaccinated. Now, not everyone will be vaccinated on May 1st. It's going to take longer than that, but everybody will be eligible, which means by sometime this summer, we are confident that everyone in our campus community who wants to get a vaccine to protect themselves, to properly protect themselves from this virus, will be able to do so. So by the time we get to this fall, our faculty, staff, and students at this institution will have the ability to get a vaccine. Now, of course, there will be some exceptions. Certain people will medically not be able to get one, and we will have to deal and adjust with that. But the CDC is confirming that the vaccines are effective, that they will, for the most part, prevent someone from getting COVID. And then even if they do get COVID after the vaccine, it takes away the risk of serious illness or death. As one of our colleagues put it to me last week, it's not that we should be scared of the virus, we should be scared of getting seriously ill or dying from it. And the vaccine takes that away. So the vaccines in that respect have been proven effective. So even if someone contracts the disease, it shouldn't harm them significantly. And that's not me talking. I am, as you all know, not a medical expert. That's medical science. And that's what we're basing our decisions on. Second, not just nationally, but Idaho's vaccine plan and distribution plan has been updated twice in the last week with new recommendations. They're currently vaccinating people over 55 with pre-existing medical conditions and about to move to everyone over age 55. In April, it gets moved down to 45, then 35, and then by May 1st, everyone. The state of Idaho has a website so you can sign up and get your appointment. And as soon as you're eligible, I encourage everyone, sign up now so that when you're eligible, you can get your appointment and get vaccinated. I have signed up for my appointment. As soon as I am eligible, I will be having my appointment and getting my vaccine. So consistent with this news nationally, this means that by the time we get into May and into June or sometime over the summer, Idaho's distribution plan will have it so that every adult who wants to get a vaccine will be able to. So third, we also took into account what's going on with our sister institutions, both in state and in the region. We reached out and we asked them, what are you planning for the fall? And most institutions, including the ones in state, are planning on in-person activities for this fall. So colleges and universities, we're seeing that movement towards a return to normal operations this fall as a trend. So in the wake of all of this information, we had to figure out what we are going to do. Now, as I think we've had as our top priority for the last year, we have to care about one another's health. And we've spent the last year trying to make all of our decisions with the health and safety of our campus community in mind, doing the best we can given our circumstances. I can assure you that making a guarantee that all of our spaces will always be free of a virus isn't within our power or, quite frankly, in our ability. We'll never be able to make such a guarantee. Before the pandemic hit, we couldn't have guaranteed all of our classrooms were free of virus or bacteria, and we're not going to be able to do that after. But I think we have to realize that we're going to make the best decisions we can and ensure that once we have a chance to be vaccinated, we can move forward. And we all wish that everyone would get a vaccine, and that would make us all feel better if we knew every single person had a vaccine. It would slow the rate of mutations because there wouldn't be a place for the disease to take hold. But we have to face the reality that in our society right now, that some amount of our population in our state and in our community won't be getting the vaccine. Now, what do I think about that? I think that's hugely unfortunate. The Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration are the experts, and they're assuring us this vaccine is safe and effective. I encourage everyone who is medically able to get the vaccine. It's unfortunate that whether to get a vaccine has become a political issue in our society rather than a medical issue. In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, at the end of the day, there's a reason that probably none of you know anyone who's had polio. The pathogen that causes polio still exists in the environment. It's in water naturally, but we are all vaccinated against it when we are children. And that's what keeps us from getting it now, even though it's still out there. There is a reason none of you know anyone that's had smallpox. That's because medical science developed a vaccine and we eradicated smallpox. Medical science does that for our society. But moving forward, we are going to get everyone who wants a vaccination will be able to get it to protect themselves. And we are making a decision with that health and safety at top of mind that by this fall, we're going to return to as normal as possible in terms of our classroom offerings and in our activities. Because we are focused on recruitment and retention, we are focused on student success, and we are going to factor in how to do that within this new normal. So re-rooming and resuming our in-person classes is what we think is best for our mission of recruitment, retention, and student success. Now, of course, we're going to continue to monitor the state of the pandemic over the next several months, and we will be prepared to respond and make changes or tweaks to our plans as we move forward. In the meantime, we're continuing in place with our mask mandates. Those will stay in place for the time being. Our social distancing guidelines remain in place. Hand washing requirements, isolation if you're sick, telework, all of our contact tracing, all of that remains in place while we await times for the vaccinations to roll out for everybody who wants it. So from now through at least most of the summer, if not all of the summer, we will continue all of our current guidelines. And as I said, we'll continue to monitor the state of the pandemic and then react accordingly. Now, we've learned that there is value also to the functionality of allowing remote students to participate in synchronous courses. We want to ensure that we're offering the best environment for student success and how we use our technology in a positive way. So we are factoring that into how we roll out our class schedule. All of that's being taken into account. But the message that we are moving forward with that is important for us to talk about today and in our message is that starting this fall, we are going to move to as close to normal of fall of 2019 as possible in our classes, in our course offerings, and in our activities around the campus. So that's where we are. That's what I have for the beginning. And now, Jenny, if we can start moving into the questions.
You bet. Thanks, Kevin. Our first question from pre-submitted questions is, will vaccinations be mandatory on campus?
Okay, that's probably the question of the day. First of all, as I just said a minute ago, you all know how I feel about the vaccinations. I hope everybody, where it's medically appropriate, gets one. So while COVID-19 vaccines are strongly encouraged to help maintain and promote the health and safety for our entire Bengal community, we have reached the conclusion that we cannot mandate vaccinations at this time. Now, I recognize that many members of our community would prefer if we did have a vaccine mandate. I do, and I understand that. However, the current legal consensus across the country is that the university likely cannot implement a mandate at this point. The COVID vaccines, their status is emergency use authorization from the FDA. So in short, at the moment, we don't think we can mandate that. So the university will continue to encourage it. We hope everybody gets it. And we will continue to promote the health and safety of the whole campus community, but we will not be requiring the COVID vaccines as mandatory.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question, will people with disabilities or underlying health conditions still be allowed to work from home for the fall semester?
Okay, yes, essentially is the short answer. Individuals who self-identify as part of a population with a higher risk for severe COVID complications can work with disability services, work with human resources to discuss what are the reasonable accommodations, which might include telework or other office accommodations so that our employees can continue to perform the essential functions of their job and do so safely. As a campus, though, on the whole, we are going to return our offices and workplaces to as normal as possible, to as close to what fall of 19 looked like. But we also know that there are going to be exceptions when medically necessary, and our plan is to work with those. So on the whole, we're going to move back towards more normal in-person operations, but we know that there will times when there will be medical necessities, and our plan is to work with our employees accordingly.
Great, thanks, Kevin. We have a follow-up to that question. So the question is, what about those who are barely working at home and won't get a shot because they'd have to return to campus?
Sorry, Jenny, I missed that question. Can you repeat that?
You bet. So the question is, what about those employees who are barely working at home and won't get a shot because they'd have to return to campus?
So the question is an employee who purposefully doesn't get a shot because then they would have to return? Am I understanding the question right?
I believe so.
Well, again, so the issue is someone choosing to not get a vaccination doesn't necessarily mean, well, if you choose not to get one, therefore you get to work remotely forever. As much as I would love to be able to say we could accommodate all employees' wishes, whether or not you can work remotely isn't just an employee choice. It's not a matter of right or entitlement for an employee to say they are going to choose to work remotely. We're going to work on what is the right timeline and the right procedures to return to work safely and what those dates and timelines might look like. And then we will have to decide whether or not it makes sense for that position, what those duties of that of job, or the duties that that job entails, and whether or not it makes sense for that position to work remotely, and then also take into account medical necessities. But we're not in a position like we never have been before the pandemic where an employee just gets to choose whether they come to work. So we're going to have to work with that. There may be accommodations, but I also like to think that we can trust each other, that we can all trust each other to do the right thing, and that we won't have, hopefully, any or very few We'll have very few situations where that is an issue, where an employee just chooses not to come to work. Because the reality is that we do need to return to normal. And when the situation is that a person should be at work, then that's what we're going to strive to get done.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Next is a statement and then a question. While certainly no one had hoped for a global pandemic to happen, the shift to work from home has been a blessing for many. Indeed, some employees are more productive at home than from the office. Many indicate that the option to work remotely will become commonplace and will allow organizations to better compete for the best candidates. The question is, will ISU support employees who wish to continue to work remotely, either in entirety or partially remotely? And will individual units/departments be able to consider those requests?
Okay, first of all, I agree with that statement. I think that there's a lot of sense in that statement. I think there are things we can learn from the pandemic and our reaction, which is that there are times when telework might be the right thing. So first of all, I think we anticipate that telework will continue at some level within our campus community for the time being. Some of it might even be unrelated to COVID-19. I know, for example, right now we have some faculty who even before the pandemic taught remotely and weren't here on campus. And that works, and where it works, that makes sense. So I think we can find where there is value in enhanced working telework relationships. There is value in that. So, I mean, telecommuting may continue as a viable option for some positions. But again, it's not a right or entitlement of the employee to just choose that. I mean, the question almost illustrates the problem when the question says whether an employee wishes to work remotely. That is one factor, but it's only one factor. I think we have to focus on whether or not it's in the best interests of our students and our mission and the work that the university needs to get done, in addition to issues of employee health and safety, as to whether an employee can work remotely. It's not just about one of those factors. It's about all of those factors. Our units may continue to use telecommuting for certain positions when the position and the duties are supported by telework, where the employee has demonstrated that they were able to continue high performance under telework, or even better performance than before. That's possible. In those cases, the supervisor or the dean or the director need to determine what those telework options are and make sure that doing so doesn't negatively impact our service levels, the productivity of the work teams, the mission that we need to perform for our students. So there's many factors to come into play. And when all those factors are met, then we can support that. I think we just have to realize we're going to approach this and be reasonable about it. We're going to trust each other to try to do the right thing. And in some cases, it might make sense, and in others, it isn't. And we just have to make those decisions going forward.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question. Will we configure our classrooms to pre-COVID configurations? Will they be like fall 2019?
So that is the plan that we're currently working towards. The registrar's office is working with all of the academic departments in that direction. So the short answer is yes. We are starting with the goal of our classrooms being configured based on the fall of 2019 capacities. Now, we've outfitted a lot of classrooms with the owls and the new technology, and we will use that to support students who are unable to come to class, or to support remote students who have registered for remote learning for other reasons when the technology is appropriate for that type of education. As we know, some types of education don't lend themselves to the remote learning. So we'll have to work with the faculty to decide which courses are the right ones to have that happen, and where it is the right thing to do pedagogically and in the delivery of the course materials, then we plan to do so. So there are lessons we can learn from the pandemic and our response, in that we can improve access for students and improve health and safety. And where it's the right thing to do, of course, we're going to continue to encourage that. But the short answer is yes, we're going to go to classroom capacity based on the fall of 2019 as the goal.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question, will departments still have to fill out a health exemption form for events and labs?
So the plan is not to have to do that. That as we're moving forward with the classroom capacity and the activities based on 2019 model and our return to normal events and functions, we want to have more our events returning at the Performing Arts Center. We want to have events in the student union. We want to have the student activities and other activities as we're normal operations. That's our goal. Again, we're going to have to continue to monitor where we are on the pandemic, make sure there isn't an outbreak or issues where we have to have levels of isolation. But if there are, we'll have to address it. But otherwise, we plan to return these activities back to our new normal in the fall. Now, over the summer, as I said, all of our guidelines are going to remain in place. But the plan for the fall is that no, we wouldn't have to have a process for approval of those. Again, assuming the course of the pandemic and the vaccinations goes as planned.
And when will the fall schedule be released?
So again, the registrar's office is working with academic departments right now to work on the rooming and the capacity requirements for particular courses. Currently, the plan is to have the course schedule released and available by April 14th. That's the target date they're working with, so that student registration can begin on the 16th of April. And there will be more details on when different students can register and what the schedule will be, the timeline to do that once that's finalized. But the registrar's office is working with the academic departments now to get that schedule put together for April 14th release to everybody.
Thanks, Kevin. And will students have the option to attend almost any class remotely?
I don't know that it's fair to necessarily say that it's almost any class. I think what we have to work on is for some classes. Some classes will remain high flex, but the majority of classes will move back to face-to-face. Now, there will still be some synchronous online courses when the subject matter and the delivery of that particular course makes sense. We will continue to have online courses. We had online courses before the pandemic. We also had courses that were synchronous online, where the classroom met in several locations at the same time. And we had courses that were offered simultaneously in Pocatello and Meridian and Anchorage all at the same time by synchronous online. We will continue to have courses like that, just like we did before the pandemic. So what we're trying to do is return to face-to-face instruction, because we've all seen the value of face-to-face instruction. I mean, yes, we proved that we can offer our academics remote in many cases, that we can do it online. But the pandemic also taught us and showed us and demonstrated that value of face-to-face instruction and how important that is. That's what we missed. That's what our students missed. So we're going to return to that as the base model of our delivery where possible, knowing again that there will be some exceptions. And there will be times when high flex courses or asynchronous online is the best method of delivery for synchronous online courses. And it was the best way to do it before the pandemic and may continue to be better after, or we may change some of those. We need to be flexible and learn some of those valuable lessons of the pandemic and continue to use them where that technology is appropriate and where it's the best way to deliver education to our students. But the primary goal that is the base from which we're working is to return our courses. If it was face-to-face before the pandemic, then we want it to be face-to-face again moving forward. Again, with appropriate exceptions where pedagogically and delivery makes sense.
Excellent. Will the high flex teaching mode still be an option in the fall semester? I know a lot of out-of-state students have taken advantage of this option, and it would be great if we could still offer classes for them.
Yeah, as I mentioned, faculty can request to continue to use a high flex model if that's what works. And from a course delivery, from a course content, from the pedagogical structure, when that makes sense and that's the right way to deliver a course, then that's how we should do it, if it's the right way. But the goal again is to move to face-to-face for most cases.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question, will the new classroom tools used during COVID be removed?
Like the owls and things like that, no. Our plan isn't to remove those. I think they have a value. So our faculty will still have access to those tools that we installed, and whether even a class that is completely face-to-face, it might make sense to have the owls and record those. It might make sense to use them in certain situations. And so where it makes sense, those will continue. We don't plan to remove that technology from the classrooms.
Thank you. And will there still be protocols in place for the fall, like masks and screening?
So, as I said, we're going to continue to evaluate the course of the pandemic over the summer and into the fall. At this point, the real answer is we haven't made that decision because we don't know where we will be 6 months from now. Now, likely some form of public health guidance may still be in place, but it's too early to tell right now. I mean, the honest answer is it's too early to be determined. We are prepared as necessary to continue with a mask or face covering mandate with certain social distancing or other requirements, but it's too early to tell right now whether those should be in place this fall. And we will get to those as we continue to monitor things over the summer.
Great, thanks, Kevin. At your last coffee with Kevin, you mentioned the effort to get employees in higher ed in group 3 for the COVID vaccine. Were university faculty and staff approved to join Idaho's vaccine distribution group 3 for the COVID vaccine?
Okay, so we did try, we made the request, and it was discussed at the Vaccine Advisory Committee. And it happened that that request came at the same time that they started to realize their flow of vaccine into the state, or distribution, flow is probably the wrong word. The delivery of vaccines to the state was changing the way they were going to do it. So essentially what they've done is eliminate the priorities. So instead of implementing a group 3, they've now changed entirely and gone with an age-based distribution only, or vaccination schedule only. Short answer is they didn't really say no to higher ed being included. They just stopped doing it that way. So there was nothing to say yes to when they went to a completely age-based distribution formula. Then within about a week of making that decision, then the continued distribution and delivery of vaccines to the state has made the change that the President of the United States announced, that they're going to move everybody into general availability by 1st of May. So short answer is no, they didn't take higher ed into a priority, but it's because they shifted to this other vaccination list. And I may not have all the dates and the age range exactly right, but I know that there's a website where the state is putting that list out that we could probably provide, or it's out there.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Just posted the state of Idaho's vaccine information, which is also where you can pre-register to get on the vaccine list. And we posted that earlier in the chat as well. So hopefully
Thanks,
that will take, you bet. Hopefully that will take care of any questions.
And again, everybody, I have already registered on the state's registration for a vaccination appointment. I put in my information, and I know that as soon as it gets to my range, that I'll get signed up for one, and I encourage everybody else to do the same.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Next question, if an employee wants to telework in the fall, where should they start the conversation? Supervisor, HR, ADA, disability services. Does it depend on the circumstance, or should they start with, oops, lost my place. Where should they start?
Okay. So an employee should start with a conversation either with their direct supervisor or with HR. I would encourage direct supervisor. HR is fine as well, though, and talk about their circumstances and why they are requesting to continue to telework so that it can be analyzed and discussed. So, even if that discussion were started right now, let's say an employee said, well, I want to continue to do that in the fall, please everybody know the decision might not be made right now, because until we know more about the state of the pandemic in the fall and how everything rolls out, we may not be able to make all those decisions right now. But I think talking about them is fine. So if someone feels that that's what they want to request, we should begin those conversations early with your supervisor or HR so that we can start talking about that and analyzing what the situation is.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We have a question from our YouTube listeners. If I receive both vaccines by the fall, what all do I need to do regarding fall?
So nationally, the Centers for Disease Control recently produced some new recommendations about what individuals who are fully vaccinated should or shouldn't do. We don't yet know what their guidance will be by the fall, and we're going to keep that updated throughout the summer. But if you are fully vaccinated, then from what we know now, that's part of why we're anticipating that we can return to normal workplace operations, normal classroom operations, is because people will have the chance to be fully vaccinated by the time fall comes around. So our anticipation is that is going to allow us to continue our come back to our more normal operations. But I know there is guidance out there right now from the CDC. And I know there's a website about what that guidance, I think they just issued it end of last week. So it's fairly new, but that's the guidance that you could operate from as of now. And I'm sure as we get into the fall, that will change. One of the things they haven't updated, at least they hadn't as of last time I checked it, which I think was Friday, they haven't updated what that means to be fully vaccinated in the educational environments. So there will probably be more to come on that in the months to come.
Great, thanks, Kevin. We just posted the new CDC guidance that you referenced, and everybody should just keep an eye on cdc.gov to keep up with those guidelines. Next question, at this point in the pandemic, is it the expectation that student-facing services / offices are open for in-person student support during regular working hours?
Okay, so all along, throughout this entire pandemic, we have been open. We have kept our student-facing operations as open as we could, and that was always one of our goals, that we never really closed, that we tried to remain open to meet the needs of our students. As a campus, we have not changed our operational levels that we've been using for the last almost year. We are still under operational level yellow, and we are currently offering the services occurring both remotely and in person in many of those cases. So each group and all of our campus groups should be continuing to serve students as best they can under whatever the operational guidelines are. And again, we are still under level yellow and are remaining that, at least at the moment. So like I've said before, we're going to be working on our return to campus protocols and what more in-person services look like over the summer. So this isn't the end of that part of the conversation. We will continue to roll out our return. Right now, no one has to think, oh, I got my vaccine, I got to come back to work the next day or after 2 weeks when it becomes effective, whatever the current guidance is, which I think is right. 2 weeks after your last dose is when you have built up the immunities. No one has to think, oh, that's it, then I have to return. That is not what we're mandating. We're going to do the return the right way after we've had enough time for our campus community to get the vaccines. And then we're going to talk about some offices may do it a little differently based on who is vaccinated, but we will be rolling that out, what our return is in the future, no one feels like they have to change anything right now. That's not what this is.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Next question. Can clinical programs that have healthcare students going on clinical rotations, working with a patient population, mandate the vaccine for their students?
Very specific question, which I hope you all appreciate. I don't necessarily have the answer to. I'll give a couple of general things, and then if Rex or Blake happens to be on and you want to chime in, that would be okay. A lot of that, I think, has to do with what are the requirements of the site placement where our clinical students are placed. I would expect that our students will have to follow the guidance that's in place where they are serving that clinical rotation. And so when they go into that, they will have to meet those guidelines. Rather than us trying to dictate what those students should or should not do at the site where they are learning, it's the site that will have to make those decisions. And so in general, I think that's the guidance we should be following. But again, if there's a better, more specific answer than that, if some Rex or Blake, if you're on and want to chime in, that's fine. If not, that's the best answer I can do for right now.
Kevin, I think that's a great answer. I think much of it is going to be determined by the clinical site. We are still evaluating our own clinical operations to then talk through mandating vaccine for people that are serving the public in our own clinical operations.
Great. Thank you, Kevin and Rex. I have another question or questions on the legality of vaccine as a follow-up question. So I'm hoping Blake is with us as well. Why can the university require some things, such as masks and social distancing, to protect others, but not mandate the vaccine for anyone who chooses to be in person, especially if we can require that employees return to on-campus activities? I understand that a few people cannot safely get the vaccine, but they should be able to get a waiver from a physician. The students can choose to take online courses if they don't want to get the vaccine. If they choose to take courses in person, then it should be required that they get the vaccine to protect others. It seems backwards that it is not a right or entitlement of employees to be able to continue to work remotely, but then the students can choose not to get the vaccine. I have the vaccine and I much prefer to come to campus and teach in person, but I can understand that there are likely employees who cannot get the vaccine and are a high risk.
Okay, that's a great question. It's thoughtful and there's a lot behind it. I'm going to give a very short, from my perspective, answer. And then if Blake has anything further, Blake, feel free to chime in. There is a big difference between saying to all of our employees and our students from a public health perspective that we can require something like a face covering. A face covering is about personal protective equipment. It's about a public health guidance about not spreading to others. And it's really ultimately, it's a piece of clothing or cloth to wear on your face for a short period of time. The university can and has and will continue for now to mandate something like that. That is different than when the university can mandate that someone get what is effectively a medical procedure, getting a vaccine. Now, I consider that to be routine. I get my flu shot every year. I get my other vaccines. I get my updates on my tetanus shots and all those kind of things, and I'm willing to do that. But it's a big step for the university to say that we are going to mandate what effectively is some level of medical procedure for our employees or students. And right now, given the state of the current vaccine, we do not believe that is within our authority to do. That's why there's that distinction. I would very much like it our campus community got the vaccine. But there's a big step between because I would like that, because I think that's the right thing to do, and I do, and because I really think that it's the prudent thing to do versus the ability to require it. And that's the line that right now, that's where the line is. Blake, do you have anything more on that?
I think that was very well said. And if folks were to get on and generally Google, can an employer mandate a vaccine? You'll see a lot of articles that talk about, yes, you can. The critical piece there to remember is that emergency use authorization. We've never really been in a situation in the legal world where we've had to test the ability of employers or higher ed institutions, educational institutions, to mandate a vaccine only under an EUA. And the general legal consensus right now is that so long as it's under that EUA, it's really off the table. We look at other vaccines, Rex would know this better. Could we mandate a meningitis vaccine? Probably. That's different, something that's been fully approved. So there's evolving legal understanding about the situation we're in with the pandemic. We're monitoring that very closely. We're watching what the FDA and the CDC is guiding employers and educational institutions toward. We'll keep a close eye on it. And we'll continue to have that conversation as the legal understanding evolves. And even if the legal understanding evolved to the point of, yes, you could do that, there's still a very valid discussion of, should we do that? We've got the right people in the room having those conversations, and we'll keep bringing the legal guidance in and letting the right people make those decisions for our campus.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate that follow-up. I think that's where we are as of now. There may come a time in the future where we have to get to the campus conversation of, should we require it, once we believe that is legally acceptable to do. And I'm going to welcome that campus conversation should we get there. But for the moment, we aren't going to be requiring it. That's where we are.
Okay, thank you. Related in terms of vaccine, are there any plans for student education about the vaccine? I have been surprised by a couple of students who said they will not get the vaccine when it becomes available because they heard, number one, the vaccine changes your DNA, and number two, because of the nanotech in quote unquote nanotech in the vaccine. I found this alarming in general, but especially because both are in health science programs.
Yeah, the level of misinformation that is out there is unfortunate, and maybe even to the level of scary. And that's really unfortunate. Our plan is that we are going to encourage and have educational materials moving forward. And we will try to do what our mission is educate our students, educate all of our citizenry about this. And so we are going to move that forward and try to do that. Because we shouldn't be in a state, we shouldn't be in a condition as a society where misinformation is leading to that level of decision making, where we have medical and science-based data that is leading to those decisions is what we should produce. So we will be talking about information campaigns. I know that one of the things that I plan to do when I get my vaccine is I'm going to talk about that publicly. I'm going to encourage people to get the vaccine. And so I think we all need to talk about doing the right thing and move that forward. Now, the state, I talked to Dave Jepson, who's one of our alumni, who is the head of the State Department of Health and Welfare. He said that they are seeing what were the initial vaccination rates when it first came out. They are starting to move in a positive direction, not just in numbers, but in percentage. So the percentage of the population that is now seeking the vaccine is increasing. So that's good. So that as this is moving forward, the trend line is going in the right direction. And I think it is our role as a university to continue to educate on this point, to get the right information out. So yes, we will be doing that.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Next question. As I understand it, all courses that are currently scheduled for HighFlex, Classroom and Zoom, will be shifted to be scheduled in Classroom only. In our department, we want to continue to offer these classes HighFlex, but scheduled as two simultaneous sections, one in classroom section and one at the same time where students participate with classroom-based students, but via Zoom. How can we make sure that our rescheduled classes are moved to classrooms that will make this HighFlex delivery continue to be possible? We've worked with faculty and students to ensure our programs are delivered online, but for us, the high flex model is the best way to deliver our programs online. Our faculty and students prefer high flex, 2 simultaneous sections, to NC only and asynchronous online.
That's a fair question, and that's one of the things I think we have to account for. So what we've tried to do, and Laura McKenzie or Joanne Tokel, if you're on and want to answer this in more detail when I'm finished, please do so. The default, the goal, if you call it, maybe it's a better word than default. The goal is to move back to face-to-face instruction, mainly because overwhelmingly that's what we hear, that it's what our students want. Our students want that face-to-face experience. At the same time, when it is the right thing to do, when it is the best way to deliver any particular course or program, if a high flex class is the best way, then we should find a way to continue to do that. But we just have to make sure that we're doing that because it is the right thing for that program or that course. And in that case, that's the discussion that has to take place between the faculty and the department and the registrar's office to determine, is that the best way to deliver that course? Have we learned that? And if we have, then we should continue to do it. We shouldn't be just doing it, though, out of fear or out of, well, we don't want change. We do it if it's the right thing. And if that is the right thing for a course or program, then that's what we should work for. But the goal is right now to move us as close to the fall 2019 type of delivery as we had before, and then find where the nuanced pieces are to do other things. But Laura or Joanne, if you have more on that topic, please chime in.
I think you stated that very well. We do want to maintain that flexibility for the departments that feel that's in the best interest of their students, while also knowing that we need to be able to keep track of the students that are physically showing up in the classroom. And so one of the communications we send out is, if that is in the best interest of your department, that there will be an open window for you to tell us, and we'll create a synchronous section that aligns with the in-person section so that the students have that option, and we can also track their preference through their registration actions.
I don't have anything to add to that, but certainly we do want to keep that option open for people for whom it has worked well.
Great, thank you all. Kevin, next question. What is the communication plan to notify students of the change of dates of schedule, availability, and registration, both continuing students and new students?
So we're working on that communication schedule now. We're going to be sending out emails, updating the website, and getting that information out, and hopefully getting that information out to everybody on campus, faculty and staff alike, so that those communications can continue. But yes, we are working on that communication schedule to the students.
Okay, next question. Do you anticipate a change in the travel restrictions anytime soon, particularly the ability to travel between campuses?
So our Roaring Back committees are constantly working. They are working all the time. In fact, we owe a lot of thanks to our Roaring Back committees, but they are currently working on evaluating this. When is the right time to change those travel restrictions? And we will update them as the right public health guidance and recommendations are out there and as things change. So that will be happening as we are constantly reviewing that. I don't have a date right now, and I don't think we should have a date. I think it's as the right time comes to update that guidance, we will do so, but they are looking at it.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Another legal question for you. Can you ask an employee if they have had the vaccine?
Well, so in general, and I have to only speak in generalities, the answer is generally no. Whether or not an employee has been vaccinated is their private medical information. So supervisors shouldn't be asking for that level of private medical information. That's not a general practice. That would be my general answer to a question like that. Blake, if you have anything, or Brian, more specific you'd like to add from an HR perspective.
Yes, yeah, if I can jump in. So Kevin's answer is correct until the EEOC analyzed the COVID vaccine about 3 or 4 months ago. And they kind of surprisingly said, normally, no, you'd not ask about something that could be disability related. Often, whether someone's getting a vaccine or not is linked to a medical condition and their ability to get it. So they take the approach that you wouldn't ask that. But for the COVID vaccine, the EEOC has said an employer can ask so long as the questioning really it stops there. It's not, did you get the vaccine? No. Well, why? Because then that becomes a disability related line of questioning. But they are allowing folks to ask just that question. There are some parameters around it, some guidelines on it. I can put into the chat box the EEOC guidance for folks who are interested. It's fairly long, but it does go into a lot of detail about COVID vaccines, also screening and how that can take place in the workplace, and some of the direction around having a discussion between supervisors and employees about COVID.
Thanks, Blake. With that in mind, I think what we have to talk about here then is if supervisors want to ask that, feel that they need to, they should check in with HR and legal before we start making any asks like that, so we know what the parameters of what we can and can't do are. So Brian, I hate to volunteer you like I do very often, but I think that's a conversation we should have to have with our supervisors before we start asking that.
I agree. And yeah, I was just going to chime in with that very similar comment that we've got work ahead of us to plan for the fall. A lot of questions, a lot of guidance to prepare to make this successful transition. I think that's got to be part of our guidance, is when and how that type of conversation would be appropriate.
Good. So we only have a couple of minutes left. So what do we have? Last minute questions people want to get in?
Okay, Kevin, if you don't mind answering one last question about the COVID screening site and what the current status / future status is of the COVID screening site.
Okay, so our COVID screening program is still ongoing because we still do have a pandemic that exists and we're still operating in that environment. We're talking about the future in terms of the fall and vaccines, but right now we are still in a pandemic. That's why we are not changing our restrictions on face coverings, on social distancing, and our other guidelines that we have in place. One of which is that we still have a screening operation, and we are going to continue to use that screening operation. Now, our health team is talking about that now. How long do we continue? What's the value of continuing it? But we're going to continue to monitor the situation for the rest of the semester and over the summer, and evaluate what the latest guidance is and determine our best practices. So what exactly that looks like in the fall, we don't know yet, but it may be part of our ongoing vigilance through the fall, or it might not. It's going to depend on what's the right thing to do medically. And that's how we will make that decision when the time comes.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I'm going to give you one last question, and then I would love to turn it back to you for closing statement. The last question is, with the attempt to return to normal, will fall have a Thanksgiving break, or will the fall schedule look more like fall of 2020?
The schedule will return to more like fall of 2019. We hope to have a normal schedule again. Our return to normal hopefully is not just on our campus, but it's our society returning to more normal. Will it be a new normal with changes? Possibly. But in terms of the calendar, I think we would look to the fall of 19 type calendar, not the fall of 20 as our guide. So we talked about a lot today, a lot of weighty issues. And I know everyone is concerned about these for all of the right reasons. So we will continue to monitor this situation over the summer. We're going to continue to work on these things. But as these vaccines roll out, again, I encourage everyone to get a vaccine. I encourage everyone to do the medically, scientifically appropriate thing and get their vaccine. Of course, for some of us, medically, we're not able to get it, and please follow the advice of your medical provider to do so. But in general, as we get our campus community vaccinated, that's going to help us return to normal. That's what's going to help us get there. So thank you all. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for tuning in today. And I appreciate everyone's help. And again, if we can all extend each other some level of trust and work together, we will continue as we have so amazingly well over this last year and deal with the changes we've had to do in the pandemic. I'm proud of everything that we've done. I'm proud of where we're going forward. So thank you, and everybody have a good day.